So, when you hear the name Fyodor Dostoyevsky, what comes to mind? Probably something dark, right? Deeply psychological, maybe even a little intimidating. And you're not wrong. His books are intense. But what's amazing is that hidden beneath all that gloom are some of the most profound and honestly super relevant lessons about what it even means to be human.
Okay, but before we dive into all that heavy stuff, let's just get one thing straight. How do you actually say his name? It's Dostoevsky. Dostoyevsky. The trick is to really lean into that toy sound in the middle. See? Not so scary now, is he?
All right, so here's the plan. First, we're going to look at his life because, wow, it was forged in crisis. Then, we'll pull out 4 huge lessons from his most famous books. We're talking about our love for misery, who we really are, the simple gift of being alive, and why trying to be perfect is a trap. And at the end, we'll see why all this matters right here, right now.
So you really can't get Dostoevsky without getting his suffering. I mean, this isn't some academic philosophy he cooked up in a cozy library. No, his ideas were hammered into shape by a life filled with almost unbelievable trauma. You have to understand that pain, because it's the key to everything he wrote.
Just look at this timeline. It's just staggering. When he's only a kid, away at school, his own father is killed, and the story is he was murdered by his own people. Flash forward to his late 20s, he gets arrested for being part of a group that just talked about radical books, and for that, he's sentenced to death by firing squad. Can you even imagine that? Standing there, waiting to be shot? And then, at the very, very last second, a messenger gallops in with a pardon from the Tsar. But he's not off the hook. Instead of death, he's sent to a Siberian labor camp, 4 years of absolute hell. This is the fire that forged his entire worldview.
Okay, so that brings us to our first big lesson. And it comes from his book, Notes from the Underground. This one is a little weird and maybe a little uncomfortable. It's the idea that we kind of love our own misery. Sounds crazy, right? But he argues that suffering gives us an identity. It makes us feel special, like our pain is unique.
You know how we're always talking about progress, about building a better future where we solve all our problems with technology and everyone's finally happy? Well, Dostoevsky would just laugh at that. He believed that even if we solved every major problem, we'd just invent new ways to be miserable. For him, you don't get rid of suffering, you just upgrade.
And he says it so bluntly here. You could solve something as massive as world hunger, and what happens next? We don't all hold hands and sing. Nope. We just find new things to be agonized about. We'd get bored, we'd get greedy, we'd get deeply, profoundly bummed out about, well, anything. The point is, our messy, complicated inner world doesn't just disappear, no matter how shiny the outside world gets.
All right, lesson number 2. This one's from his absolute masterpiece, Crime and Punishment. And it asks a really fundamental question. How well do you actually know yourself? It's all about that massive, sometimes terrifying gap between the person you think you are in your head and the person you actually are when things get real.
So the main character, Raskolnikov, he's this brilliant but poor student. And he's got this idea, this obsession with guys like Napoleon. He cooks up this whole theory that certain extraordinary people are above the law, that they have the right to, well, to do terrible things like shed blood, if it's for a greater purpose. And of course, he convinces himself that he's one of them.
So what does he do? He puts his theory into practice. He actually murders an old pawnbroker to prove his point. But it all goes wrong. He doesn't feel powerful. He doesn't feel like Napoleon. He's just wrecked. He's tormented by guilt, paranoia, and this overwhelming horror. He literally falls apart, physically and mentally. And in that breakdown, he realizes that whole ruthless Superman thing, it was all a fantasy he told himself.
And this is the incredible twist of the story. Raskolnikov believed he was a monster trying to act like a normal person. What he discovers is the exact opposite. He's actually a sensitive, compassionate person who convinced himself he could be a monster. And that's Dostoevsky's big idea here. Maybe, just maybe, we're not just hiding our dark side. Maybe we're also hiding our own goodness, even from ourselves.
Okay, for our third lesson, we're going back to that firing squad, because that experience is poured directly into his novel, The Idiot. This lesson is all about finding the absolutely mind-blowing value of just being alive.
Just think about that. 3 minutes. That's how long Dostoevsky thought he had left on Earth. Standing there, waiting for the order to fire. And in those 3 minutes, everything changed. His whole perception of reality just flipped.
He describes looking up and seeing the sun glinting off a golden church dome. Just a little sparkle of light. Something he'd probably seen a million times and never even noticed.
But now, with death seconds away, it was the most beautiful, most entrancing thing he'd ever seen. Suddenly, the simple fact of existence, of seeing, of breathing, it wasn't simple at all. It was everything. It was infinitely precious.
And that's the whole idea behind the novel. What if a person could actually live like that every day? With that intense, near-death level of gratitude, you wouldn't get caught up in petty arguments or social status. You'd just be in awe of everything. But how would a person like that look to the rest of us, to the normal, cynical, hurried world? They'd look like an idiot.
And that brings us to our final lesson from what might be his greatest achievement, the brothers Karamazov. This one is a huge warning about something we're all a little guilty of: chasing the dream of perfection.
There's this incredible chapter in the book, a story within the story. In it, Jesus comes back to Earth, but this is during the Spanish Inquisition, and instead of being welcomed, he's immediately arrested. The old Grand Inquisitor comes to his cell and basically tells him, "We don't want you here. Your ideals are too perfect. Humanity can't handle them. Trying to live up to your standards of absolute freedom and goodness just makes people miserable and causes chaos."
It's a really radical idea. What he's saying is, we have to stop trying to be perfect. We have to accept that we're all a messy mix of folly, greed, and selfishness, and that's never going to change. And here's the kicker. It's only by accepting that, by accepting our deep flaws, that we can start to build a life based on real, genuine compassion for ourselves and for others. So, okay, we've gone through all this, but why does any of it matter now? Why should we care about this guy from the 1800s? Well, think about our world. We are obsessed with upbeat, positive stories, self-improvement, success, happiness hacks. Dostoevsky is like the ultimate reality check. He offers this darker but maybe more humane truth. Life is suffering. That's the baseline. And he's not saying this to be a downer. He's saying that accepting this fact is the only real starting point for compassion.
I mean, we put so much faith in the idea that the next piece of tech, the next life hack, the next big thing is finally going to solve us. Dostoevsky's wisdom is this powerful, timeless reminder that, nope, we are, and always will be, deeply flawed, messy, complicated creatures. The world changes, but our fundamental human nature, not so much.
So, I guess that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. In our constant race for progress, in our endless quest to perfect ourselves in our world, have we maybe forgotten the value of our own flaws? That maybe accepting our imperfections isn't weakness, but the very thing that makes us human?